And welcome back. This is going to be part 2 of our retrospective on the Death Star. Here's the rules again. It's got to be 375 scale. It's got to be Death Star 1, and it has to be official. So we're going to be taking a look at everything from the start of the Power of the Force 2 line in 1995 until modern. So we left you off at the beginning of the Dark Decade, or I guess to keep with the Star Wars theme, the Dark Times. That was the period between 1985, where Kenner ended the line, and 1995, where it resumed the line in the Power of the Force 2 collection. There was no Star Wars toys between that period made in that 3 3/4 line, or for the action figure scale. I believe Bendham's had a line right before they started doing these Power of the Force figures again, but those weren't really action figures. So for Star Wars collectors, there was this period where there was pretty much nothing. You could get stuff in whatever secondary market existed. I mean, this is kind of like pre-eBay at the point too. So that was it. It was the Dark Times. There was nothing left there. So then we got, in 1995, the Power of the Force 2 collection relaunched. I was around, I think, 12 years old at the time. That's what got me into collecting, was the Power of the Force 2 line when that came out. It was great. It still had that kind of throwback aesthetic. The characters looked really weird, as you can see some of them on the box here. They reminded me of the He-Man figures that were prominent throughout my childhood. They had these big muscular bodies, looked nothing like the actual figures. Chewbacca, it was really kind of weird looking. Princess Leia was just an awful mold at the time, but it's what we had. They were still kind of cool. They had this great design with this little bio on the back, just kind of odd, a little bit different, but still kept that sort of Kenner look where you had a picture of the actual character from the film on the card back. So preserved a lot of that. So we're going to kick it off by starting out in 1996, which was the year after the line launch. We started getting some play sets. This one is quite unique. It's a little bit of a capture of the larger 1978 Death Star we already showed you, where it's focusing on just one room instead of a larger playset. As always, I love looking at box work, so let's start with this box. As you can see here, really great shot of the product on the front. I love that, recreate the movie scene, so it kind of kept that like Kenner aesthetic alive to it. And then just having the figures in that action sequence display. And as it spins around, you could just really see just all the play features on the set. Nothing by way of people interacting with the figures again, just a very brief cut like we saw in the old Kenner boxes when it came to the vehicles, where we just saw a couple characters. Some of the play sets were like that too. The dungeons, the Jabba Palace dungeons and such were just characters on there. There was no one playing with them. So I think this is fine. It kind of kept to that old Kenner style. So, pretty perfect, but I don't want to belabor it too much. It's just a basic box. It has those old colors to it. What's really great is what's inside. So taking a look at our Detention block cell. As I said, the 1978, you had that one little area, and all it really had was a trash chute and a couple of those little, not keypads, but areas where the Death Star troopers would operate the terminals. So that was the Detention block. So this, we get the actual look here of that Detention block with that little hexagonal, or I'm sorry, pentagonal shape to it. And then you have these lasers here that fire with the little cameras, the targeting cameras on them. So they included those, which was great. And then you got the cell, which was sort of critical to the moment and to the whole scene. And it has this sliding door where you could put Princess Leia into it. I guess if you had a bunch of these, you could try to string them together. And in the vintage collection, they do that a lot. Like they did that with the Tantive 4 ship, where you could take the corridors and start stringing them together and make a larger corridor. It's not really going to neatly connect, but you could do it if you had a couple of these and just kind of make a row to give you a little depth to it. The other odd thing they included was this turbo laser, which looks nothing like the turbo laser from the film, but it does have that firing effect because everything in the 90s could fire or had some kind of feature like that. And on the artwork, they have, or I don't think they had it on here, but I have seen in the catalogs where they have like a stormtrooper operating the gun because they didn't have the Death Star gunner just yet. He was, I believe, later in the year, but after they would have shot the box art for this thing. But just a couple stickers on here on the panels, and then of course the iconic trash chute. I mean, that has to be there where you could have the characters jump into it. And then they had that nice paneling on the floor here, the grating, which was great. So altogether, this was a really cool little playset. They weren't really doing a whole lot of playsets at the time. The line just launched. We got a couple vehicles. We got a couple figures. So it was really nice having something to put them into this sort of action sequence, this action scene. And it came in this really tiny box, which was neat too. It didn't really take a lot of space up on the toy shelf, but it was easy to grab. I got this one at KB, you could see on there. I didn't want to take the sticker off. And I mean, it's kind of, looking at this, $9.99 is what I paid for it at the time. This would probably be at least $20 or $30 now if it was produced. So it's, the other sad thing is this hasn't been, anything like this hasn't been made since 1996. We have gotten no modern equivalent of this. You know, nothing had been produced like this prior to this either. So this is the first and only of its kind. So it's all you got right now for your figures if you want a detention center that is official and not made in a custom market or something like that. So that is the Detention Block Rescue Set for your Luke and Han Stormtrooper, and for your Chewbacca, Princess Leia, and whoever else you wanted to throw into it. But that's really where we're going to start. This is one of the only two actual play sets you're going to see in this segment, although we have a lot to show you. But this is, just to start off on a sad note, this is all we got since 1996 up until now in terms of Death Star play sets. So here's this one, and then we're going to transition over to the other one from this pairing. And 96 was a great year for Death Star when we got not only one but two playsets, and those were the first since 78 essentially from the last actual Death Star space station. Let's take a look at this box as well. This one is the Death Star Escape, and this is basically the chasm where Luke and Leia swung across to escape the stormtroopers, hence escape. A couple of play elements on this you'll see is the grappling hook. Remember when I said at the time, I pointed out there was no grappling hook and there wouldn't be for years? Well, here's kind of a loose version of it. You'll see, I'll show you a better version later with another Death Star adjacent sort of play element. And then you just basically see the action sequence there again. They have Darth Vader and Obi-Wan dueling on the bridge, but they didn't do that in the movie. We will show you a more appropriate Death Star set for those two. And that's really it. Not a whole lot going on. Kind of crazy looking at this, how small the box is compared to this giant playset. So again, they kind of were really good at cramming everything down and making it really portable and in order for you to be able to build this thing. But same price point as the other one. This was also $10. You'll see on this one here, we have that opening door, which is great, just like on the Death Star. Good detail on this too for 1996. You have the chasm here with the removable bridge. So this one is a much bigger bridge than the Death Star space station from Kenner. When I mentioned that was the granddaddy of Death Star playsets, I really meant that, because every one you see is kind of like a piece of that. We'll show you one other one toward the middle of this segment. It was just a different piece instead of the whole thing together. So you have the cell block where they kind of had a cell block, and you have this chasm where they had that really tiny retractable bridge with the grappling hook on it, and this one has a full retractable bridge with the grappling hook on it. Now this one's attached to like a little Stormtrooper utility belt that Luke could put on, so it kind of completes the look. There's no actual grappling hook on this. It's just a string attached to this little I don't know, podium or signal thing that was at the top of the Death Star there, so you don't actually get to see the grappling hook. And then they have this, again, it was the 90s. We love things that shoot. So we have this firing missile here. I don't want it going everywhere, so I'll just show you there. For a Stormtrooper to stand on and hold this giant cannon. We had, in the movie, there were Stormtroopers on multiple levels. So that kind of, makes sense with the game, with the play element here. If you wanted to, you could pop this off and I guess buy a second set and have a second door so you could simulate having both sides closed if you wanted to or something like that. But other than that, we have this great, remember Nick loves artwork, we have this great artwork here of the chasm looking straight down at it. So that's pretty cool that they included that. This was still Kenner at the time, transitioning to Hasbro. Hasbro already acquired at the time, but it still had a lot of those Kenner elements of incorporating cardboard backs into things, which I really liked about that line. Other than that, just a couple stickers for some detail on the sides here, and then on the door controls. But not much else going on with this, but that's all you really needed at the time. It just gave you another little element to put your characters into, little pegs on here for the characters to go on, and of course this optional removable bridge here, which was really neat and really made this feel like more of a chasm than the 78 Kenner one with the swinging feature. So this was far superior in my opinion, just because of that larger chasm with the feature here. But just another little aspect of Death Star playsets. We didn't have a whole lot at the time, but I thought this had good detail to it, good functionality to it. These two together was great. It was a great year for the Death Star, 96. But I mean, like I said in the last bit there, the sad note is this was it. I mean, these are the only two actual playsets we have from the 90s until now. They're pretty cool, but I mean, it's kind of crazy we haven't had anything larger or even just this size, bringing like a new dimension to it. I mean, we had a Power of the Force, or was it maybe it was the Power of the Jedi line where we had a carbon freezing chamber, but then we just got a new one in the vintage collection. So not sure why something like this can't be recreated as well. Anyway, that's this guy. Let's transition one more year forward and I'll show you what we got in 97. That was Death Star adjacent. And my bad, I meant 96 still. We got one more thing to show you in 96, and that is the electronic Star Wars figures, because not only did we get missiles that fired in the 90s, but also we were big on trying out electronics because light-up features were great. So, of course, we have the electronic Power of the Force 2, Darth Vader and Obi-Wan. The two of them together form this really great, and I'll show it to you all assembled, really great scene here with the Death Star corridor looking on at the hangar where the Millennium Falcon was in with this base, and the two of them could have a duel. Of course, I want to start out by showing you the packaging on these guys. If you're wondering why I still have these in the packaging, no, I didn't preserve them thinking they were going to be worth a ton. Quite the opposite. It's a little sad. I picked these up for $7 each at a local comic shop in the packaging. So I'm kind of curious to see if they still work too. I don't see any battery leakage out of these guys, but you know, what are these, like 25, 27 years old? We'll find out if they light up. Be a surprise here. But anyway, let's take a look at the packaging. I'm glad I have these things still in the packaging, so I'll show you here. We have this, they're very similar. You can just see the character in there with the back, and of course, either Obi-Wan or Darth Vader, and they're both going to have a slice of the Millennium Falcon on the back of the card here, and basically what you're doing is you're cutting that out in order to make the picture whole. It's not going to be a really neat aligned picture like it shows in the back of the cardstock, where I think in this shot they had just a larger one-piece printout. But you know, you could just cut it out as best you can and make the sort of cardboard back. Again, Kenner, I love seeing that. Fun fact, if you have the Vader, you could connect him with the Luke Skywalker Jedi Knight electronic figure, and it has sort of the same paneling Death Star work, but it's Death Star 2 now, and Luke comes with one large piece of the Death Star 2 back, like you'd see where the Emperor's chair was in front of, out that window, and the two could then connect and make that scene as well. But you don't get that one large piece of cutout for these guys. You each get a little piece of the puzzle. So disappointing. Then you get that little partition in the middle. But why don't we crack these guys open and let's find out if they light up. Wow, what a nostalgia kick reuniting these things after 20-something years in the package. They were meant to be together. So here we go. You can see the plastic panel work here of the Death Star. This is some nice official plastic panel work. We're not going to see this again. This is weird. It only came in this set. and then you have them on their base here. The base is a very nondescript, just black with lines on it. It's not the Death Star flooring. I think it's meant to reflect the reflective flooring. And then you just see the Millennium Falcon in the background. You could line it up as best you can. I'm sure I could cut it a little closer to get rid of those white lines so it blends a little bit better. But this is basically the Death Star hangar. Call this the Death Star hangar set. If you could take the figures off of here, and then you could just have this little element for your display. The figures, they just kind of twist around and fight here. But the real mystery you're wondering is, do they still light up after 20-something years in the package? And let's find out. I haven't tried that yet. I believe there's a button on here somewhere, and yep, Obi-Wan lights up. And see if Darth Vader does. Yeah, Darth Vader lights up too. Wow, these things really held their charge. It's very, very faint. You're not going to be able to see it. I would have to make it pretty dark in here. And even then, they're still stand out. These really weren't lighting up all that much in their heyday, as I recall too. So it's pretty much just going to be in a darker environment. Just a little force effects light up. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty cool that, they had this little puppeteering feature to them, but really focusing on, the theme of this video, the Death Star adjacent playset here, which is the Death Star hangar set. Again, a cardboard backdrop like we showed you in the 79 version, but this time a little bit of plastic paneling work here that you could incorporate to sort of create that element of building out a Death Star with the other Death Star playsets at the time. So now we're done with 96. Let's move on to 97. So 1997, by now we had the Cinema 3-packs in full swing. This one is the Death Star Escape. The 3-packs were a series of 3 figures, as the name denotes. We had, for different elements from the films, we had Creature Cantina 3-pack. We had a Jabba's Dancers 3-pack, which they still haven't made since then. Maybe we'll get into that if we do a History of Jabba's Palace Playsets retrospective. We have the Minoc Hunt 3-pack. We have all sorts of different 3-packs. And they basically follow one specific scene from the films and give you 3 characters. Often, more than not, those characters hadn't been introduced at that point. Sometimes you're going to get multiple repacks of figures, but in this case, we have the Death Star Escape. We'll give you a close-up the package here, because we always love looking at packaging. True to its name, it's a little cinema scene here where you have 3 figures, a plastic display element, and then a backdrop to go along with it. And on the back, you get that classic cinema scene of, in this case, the Han and Luke Stormtrooper with Chewbacca. So that's really it. Again, this is a new one. It did not cost a whole lot. It's kind of sad. This one was about $15 to get this, which I think it might have cost that at the time. So at least this held its value. So let's open this guy up and check him out. All right, well, this cinema scene, the base to it really isn't all that special or unique. They try to make it sort of gangplanky style to replicate the Death Star corridor or the elevator bank area in which they were in. But the real jewel is the backdrop, which again is a cardboard back like Kenner loves to do. So it gives you more Death Star element to it, although it's kind of disrupted by these little holes where they had the tabs coming through to hold the figures. But basically you just cut along the dotted lines and throw that in there. I don't want to do that because I love the whole aesthetic here. I love that little note, an adult should do this. I don't see an adult here, so I went ahead and moved all the tabs. But other than that, with the set, you got, there we go, we got a unique prisoner Chewbacca or fake captive Chewbacca figure here with these restraining cuffs. A little different than his shackles in the movie, but this is the only version of this character we ever got, I think, including until now. And then we got a alternative release of the Luke Stormtrooper here, featuring this is Han Stormtrooper, I'm sorry. So we got a wide release of the Han Stormtrooper. Han Stormtrooper before that was only a mail-away, one of my favorite mail-aways at the time. It came out, I believe, a year earlier, and he had this little bend in the arm, no weapon accessory. He just came like this with the helmet. I thought he was pretty cool because they didn't have any kind of disguise figures at the time. I think a year after that, they came out with Luke Stormtrooper. Different mold than this Luke Stormtrooper. It was a little bit of a wider stance. He had a narrower stance, and then came with the blaster. These blasters are a little different. I'm not sure why this pack included them, but they have this scope extension on it, whereas the other ones kind of cut off and have a shorter scope on the top part here. So that was kind of a unique feature that they added to these blasters. So they're unique to this set. Not really sure why they did that and changed the mold up when they could have just went with the existing blaster rifle from the 95 Power of the Force series, but they did for some reason. So that's really it for this Death Star adjacent element. Gives you a little bit of a corridor inspired play set or play element, but that's really it. There wasn't much else to it. We didn't have sort of cinema scenes like this, although Kenner did do a lot of different backdrops. They were more just shots of the movies with the characters in them, and not necessarily like this, where it was more an actual backdrop, with the exception of the Death Star tie hanger we showed you. So this was kind of cool that they started doing this with a couple of the different 3-pack sets, and it gives us a little bit more Death Star to sort of expand out our Death Star that we have to build ourselves a piece at a time. So let's fast forward a little bit to 2002 now, which is sort of the best year it has been for Death Stars in a while, in the past 20 years. So let's check out that segment next. So 2002 was a great year for Star Wars collectors in general. It was the 25th anniversary. We had some special features that year, special things to collect, and it was the most Death Star love we got in a generation, so it was pretty great. We're going to start with the 25th anniversary line of figures that was part of Saga Collection, not the Saga Collection. We'll get to that later. I think this was just Saga Blue Collection. So they had the subline, 25th anniversary. It was these 3 sets of characters here. I don't have the packaging anymore because it was very nondescript, not essential to me. They were just kind of these spherical packages, designs. I'll show you a picture here. So you could see them in their little window boxes. And then on the back, they had the scene from the film that all these were from. This was called the Swing to Freedom. And I'll give you a close-up of this one here. So you could see Luke and Leia here in this pose. Now they're not, while they do have those 5 points of articulation, they're really kind of stuck in this pose. The leg isn't going to do much more than swing. So Luke is really kind of mounted here. Same with Leia. One of the more accurate of the face sculpts for both of the characters at the time. They were starting to get this better attention to detail. And he finally comes with that fully designed grappling hook, which we had not seen at this point while he's wearing his Stormtrooper utility belt. So it comes with a really nice piece of the Death Star Chasm Bridge that we saw in the playset back in '96. But this is its own piece. It's a little bit more reimagined. You can even see the little area where the bridge is out at the front of it. So this is a really nice Death Star adjacent element. Not a playset, but like we said, we're being thorough and covering anything that has any piece of the environment, and this definitely does. So this was really great, again, to get that grappling hook, so then you could just fully realize that scene with the '96 Death Star Escape playset. And then the next set we have here is the Han Solo and Chewbacca Death Star Escape, it's called. I believe that the element here is meant to represent them escaping onto the Falcon right after they all reunite. So that's what the flooring here is. But again, they're kind of stuck in this pose. They're not going to be able to do any other pose, essentially. I still have the rubber bands on the weapons here holding them in place. But some of the best Han and Chewbacca designs we've seen at the time. They even had a functional holster on here for Han, although it would be kind of weird to holster the gun because he'd still just be out in this lunging position. But a nice, like squatting, shooting Chewbacca here, so that's pretty cool too. And the Death Star floor here is pretty great, one of the best ones we've seen at this point. And lastly, we have what's called the Final Duel. So I made it the final piece for this segment here. And this is the iconic scene between Darth Vader and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and them fighting in what we just showed you in that electronic segment. This is a little bit more realized. The floor is much better on this one. You can see some lines there and stuff, but that's basically just the base here. This is also the best Obi-Wan we've had at this point, with the hood up there and the robes and everything. I mean, it just looks really great. The Darth Vader too, he's a lot more slender than other Darth Vaders we've seen at this point. He even has those red lenses, which were unique to the helmet for A New Hope. Even the correct buttons on the what do we call that? The chest plate there, his rebreather unit or whatever it's called, life support system. So everything looking great there. Lightsabers look great. Again, they're stuck in this pose. They're not going to leave this pose. This is it for them forever. But these were meant, as much as they were figures, they were more display pieces. They come on these environments. I mean, these might have even been the inspiration for the Black Series set pieces that we saw later on, the centerpiece or masterpiece, whatever they were called, because the figures are just sort of stuck in this pose. But it's a great play element. If this was bigger, you could throw more characters in there too, like the stormtroopers watching or something like that. But this is cool that they kind of did this to sort of celebrate the fandom at this point in time, 25 years in. We got some really highly detailed figures, some of the best at this point of the design lines. And it was a lot of Death Star love. Each piece was the Death Star. I mean, it was sort of a pivotal part of the film. The whole plot line revolved around it, so you really had to. I mean, I guess they could have thrown a Cantina one for Han and Chewbacca too, but or a Docking Bay 94 kind of thing. But I think this really worked. I loved how it was just on theme. Everything was Death Star. Brought this back, and these are just a little bit more that you could add to your Death Star that you're building out on your own. So we got one more huge thing from 2002 I'm really excited about, still in that Saga collection, so let's look at that now. Told you it was a great year for Death Star lovers. 2002 gave us the Trash Compactor two-part set. Love the Trash Compactor scene, huge fan of the Dianoga. I talked about that at length in the last video. You can see one flanking me over my right shoulder here. We finally got like a film realized version of the Dianoga. I don't think we got anything ever since this. It was two parts here. You had one with Leia and Chewbacca. Leia, of course, having that long, I don't know, metal stick trying to brace the compactor walls from closing. Chewbacca beating on the door here. And then in the next scene, you got Han and Luke Stormtrooper. Of course, Luke being choked by the Dianoga and Han trying to rescue him. So it had two different aspects of the scene going on at once. But when you put them together, they lined up quite perfectly here. And you got a lot of little floating trash in here. And it just really built out the scene that wasn't really realized at this point, except with foam trash. So really cool, really unique piece of your Death Star you're building out. And that great Dianoga. Not much in the box, so I'm not going to spend time showing you that. It just had the, originally the set displayed in here. And then on the back, it shows you how you can assemble your Dianoga to have the full-length creature in there. But it just had a little cardboard backdrop. This one you didn't have to worry about cutting out. It was pre-cut for you. You just sort of assemble it together here. And that's it. I mean, it's a great, simple set. We had some transparent water elements in there too. And it just really worked. I mean, this is a great set. Again, it's not really a play set. It's more of a diorama. You can't really do much in here other than this scene. The characters are sort of stuck in these positions here, but you could really reenact this scene or live out this scene in this display set or aspects of the scene. Or I guess you could just remove the characters and make that unique scene going on one at a time. But they allowed you to do that. It's more than Death Star adjacent. It's a pseudo play set, so of course we had to include this one. It's one of my favorite. It was just a great period. Again, like I said, 2002, 25 years in, collecting, celebrating the great aspects of Star Wars, and of course the Death Star. So this was just a home run for them in the year to do that, Hasbro, to include this set, and with all the other Death Star elements. Haven't seen anything like that since. Hopefully we get some more stuff like this. It would be great just to have little aspects of the Death Star if we're not going to get another Death Star playset to sort of capture, the whimsy and the magic of Star Wars again like this. So hopefully we'll see something in the vintage collection. It would be nice to have one complete trash compactor scene piece, maybe even connecting up to the detention block, to have a 2-level one. I don't know, that's just a quick and easy idea, but you know, cross our fingers and hope. I mean, it could be a new hope. We'll see. But that is it for 2002. A lot of Death Star going on. We got just one more element to show you. Again, it's going to be Death Star adjacent, not a playset. Only playsets we had from in the modern era were in '96, and it was those two I showed you at the beginning. So let's move on to the next scene. We're going to have a bunch of grumpy old guys to look at and round out the last of our Death Star pieces. All right, we reached the end of our segment. We're going to end in 2006. Sadly, that is the last year that we could find anything Death Star 1 related. We're going to have this set I like to call the 7 Angry Men, or the Death Star briefing set. There's not much of a play element here, but you do get this really nice cardboard backdrop of the Death Star briefing room. Not much in the box here. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. You just get that scene on the back here going over the profiles of all the characters. Also, the only time we got some of these guys ever. So if you wanted them, you kind of missed them, or you could track it down in the secondary market. But we'll just take this out here to show you. I'm not going to remove the characters because this is about the Death Star element and not the characters themselves. But we got the briefing table with the chairs here and the characters behind the chairs. This is the only time I've ever seen the briefing room. So this was nice to have this included. This would have been a great set. I recall when they did the Jedi Council chamber, they did it in four segments, or maybe it was 6 segments. But you got a couple of chairs and you get a character and it built out the whole chamber. This would have been a slam dunk to do this the same way, to do the table and to just have a couple wedges that you could put together to make that briefing table with all the chairs and then all these characters. Hopefully we'll see that in the vintage collection where we could get that nice Death Star briefing scene and bring some of these characters that haven't been issued since this piece in 2006. So you got all the characters that were there at the scene and that table, and that's basically it. Here's another element for your Death Star. To just give your Death Star a little more depth and color. At this point, the characters started getting better facial likeness and better components to it, better scale in terms of the blasters and whatnot. No more of those muscular bodies. Everything was looking pretty good by 2006, and it only got better from there. So that's the end of our look at the Death Star 1 and a retrospective. Again, if we missed anything, let us know. We had a conversation on it. We could not think of or find anything between 2006 and 2022 that was a Death Star playset or Death Star adjacent in terms of some kind of plastic element of it. Please let us know. We were scratching our heads and just it's kind of scary that it was 16 years and nothing. But I think that's the case. There were some Death Star 2 elements, of course, with the new Empire or the Emperor set in the vintage collection that includes his chair and the window and all that. But that's Death Star 2. Nothing else for Death Star 1 that we could find. So let us know. I'm really curious if there was anything else that was officially produced by Hasbro for the 3 3/4 line. Nothing that we could find, and that's a really big time gap. So hopefully we see something soon. It would have been great to get something in a HasLab, but it would be even better if we get it in a main line because we definitely need Death Star stuff. Like it's been too long. I mean, ideally, a huge one like the 78 space station would be great, but settling for little bits that could connect like they've been doing with the Tantive 4 set in the vintage collection, or the Bespin Cloud City set, the Carbon Freezing Chamber, and the Jabba's Palace set where they've been releasing different segments of it that you can kind of string together. That'd be great, especially for the Death Star. That worked for the Death Star, make it modular, give us a lot of different sets that we could spring together and just make something great out of. But we need something. So that's it for this retrospective. Let us know what you thought. Let us know if we're missing anything. Let us know what else you want to see. I got some ideas, but I'd like to hear from you guys too on what else we should be taking a look at. So that's all for now. Like, subscribe, and follow. Always something new on Rebelscum, so be sure to check back. So until next time, stay vigilant, you Rebelscum.